Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Council Chambers. On this kind of somber March 27th, today we had the privilege to honor and remember Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan for their dedication to protecting the lives of residents within the whole Edmonton Metro region. Today we also mourn with the families that were affected by the shooting in Nashville. This is a sad event that happens far too often. And we also mourn with my family as we lost my Aunt Rebecca earlier today. She was a beautiful and gracious person that should be missed. So may they all rest in peace. With that, Council, there's an agenda before you. Deputy Mayor, for the adoption, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Town Council adopt the March 27, 2023 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you. Administration, anything to
add? Nothing to add at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. We'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Number 3 is the public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, has anybody registered to speak?
Through Your Worship, no, there has not been.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody in chambers that would like to speak to council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Seeing none, move on to number 4, which is presentations and delegations. We have nothing scheduled. Number 5 is statutory public hearings. We also have nothing scheduled today either. Moving on to number 6 is the council meeting of March 13th for the adoption of the minutes. Councillor Meyer, please.
Your Worship, the Town Council approved the March 13th, 2023 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, you had a chance to read it. Any errors or omissions on the minutes? Okay, see none. Just one quick question regarding, what is that? Page 8 of 111. I noticed when I was reading through the previous agenda packages, there was a time for when the town manager came in and when the town manager left. But there was no times for anybody else that left when the meeting was closed at 12:03. I think that was asked, but was it noted here that, was that removed from the official minutes?
Through Your Worship, we left it in because that is the process that we show when staff come and go if they haven't started at the beginning of the meeting. So the CAO had come in late, and so it shows the time that they left as well. It's just the process that we use for minute taking.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any more questions, comments? Okay. Thanks for the motion, Councillor Meyer. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to 7.1, and that is the council boards and committee minutes. Councillor Hassard, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Town Council receive the council board and committee meeting minutes committee minutes for information.
Okay. Thank you. So members of council, it's for the TLC minutes from November 24th, 2022 and February 9th of 2023. Any questions, comments to the council representative that sits on the committee? Councillor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the representative. I noticed in both minutes there was updates in regards to the leisure pool and the leak that had occurred. Council hasn't really heard much in the way of an update. I'm just wondering either through yourself or through administration if we have any updates, as obviously that could be a significant fiscal capital requirement coming forward.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a few things to share.
Go ahead.
Are you speaking about it, whether or not it's open? It is open.
I know it's
Yes.
open. I'm looking for an update on the further investigation, the outcome, whether it's insurance, whether it's
As far
going
as
to be
we know
capital
right
assets, et cetera.
now, and that was as of last meeting, the insurance is picking up the tab on that, but will not cover any lost revenue due to the pool being shut down. As far as we know, all the repairs are covered, minus our deductible.
Excellent.
Thank you for that update, and that was a good question for clarity. Any other questions? Okay. Councillor Loynes?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is in regards to page 17 of 111. Councillor Hansard, your comment there says strategic planning moving forward to the rec center phase 1, and we'll be moving forward in phases. Can I just get some clarification that that was just in regards to the planning and not the actual rec center being built, as that hasn't come to council yet?
Yes, and you know that, I had a question about that myself, and I will be getting that clarified. We have our general manager being the secretary to the board minutes, and it's a lot for the general manager to be doing. And I have to get clarification on that. We are not moving forward to other phases. We have not moved forward to actually starting phase 1 even. We've just approved going for the next step in the process. So I'll get that clarified.
Thank you. That's all.
That's everything. Any other questions? Okay. I just have a couple questions as well regarding that. On page 14, Deputy Mayor. So these are the minutes from November 24th. And it says that the update from just the reporting in and out, it was mentioned that the Town of Stony Plain Strategic Planning gave a positive review for the overall management of the TLC. May I ask which strategic planning was that referring to?
There was a comment made, I'm going to have a discussion with the general manager. There was a comment made regarding the possibility of looking at management. So that's another item that I do have that I have to get clarified with the general manager.
Okay, thank you. Then on page 17 of 111, under reporting in and out, there was mention by Councillor Stevenson that on December 19th, an additional council to discuss the off-site levies under the MJ. So I'm not too sure what an additional council is. Was there some clarity provided for that?
I'm going to page 17, just at, sorry. Mr. Mayor. I think she was just reporting in general about Spruce Grove's off-site levies. I don't think it had actually, to my knowledge, it had nothing to do with the TLC. So I'm not sure actually why it's there, but there's a few things on my list to discuss at the next meeting.
Sure, thank you. And that's, yeah, if you can bring that forward and just send it, an email response. What an additional council is in terms of the minutes. Okay, any other questions for clarity and understanding? See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to number 8 of our agenda. There's no bylaw scheduled for tonight, so moving to our business items. We have 4 on queue, so 9.1. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening to yourself and fellow members of council and administration. In the 2022-2025 strategic plan of council, it was identified that the town should undertake the development of a public art strategy to guide the placement and design of public art in the community. This strategy was also one of the initiatives in the 2022-24 corporate plan and a recommended action in the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Action Plan. The town commissioned MDS Art Consulting in 2022 to assist in the development of the strategy. And the strategic objective for this project was to complete a 5-year strategy, including vision for public art, murals in Stony Plain, document the best practices review, direction for growth and refinement of the public art and mural program, and direction for the management of the public art and mural reserve funds. A review of the town's current situation and documents demonstrated that art and culture is significant in the future vision of Stony Plain, particularly the development of cultural tourism. Sorry, I'm a slide ahead of myself. And is integral in municipal planning. What was required was a bold vision with core priorities that can guide the development of a new art and public places program, which will bring together the existing mural program and public art programs. Multiple opportunities for stakeholder and public participation were presented throughout the project, including a public survey that was available online and in person at locations around the town, stakeholder engagement via the Cultural Roundtable, internal presentations and surveying, and in-person engagement hosted by the consulting company at Midsummer Thursdays last year. So this all culminated in a 5-year strategy, which has an overarching vision. Art in public places will lead Stony Plain into the future through connecting community, building cultural capacity, and embedding art everywhere. It has 7 key priorities and a set of recommendations that can be applied to strategic and corporate planning through strategic and corporate planning procedures and implementation via Town Council, Cultural Roundtable, and the Culture and Tourism Development Unit. It will also be supported by individuals and organizations throughout the municipality. As noted earlier, there are 7 key priorities that will lead the community through this document. These include encouraging collaboration, embracing technology, challenging the ideas of time and space, and a commitment to the values of diversity and inclusion. The 7 key priorities then lead to 15 recommendations and 34 action items. So in the interest of time, I won't go through all of the key priorities or recommendations with you, but the action items include things such as developing cross-departmental collaboration or expanding cross-departmental collaboration, animating existing assets, and undertaking an audit of the procurement process to examine accessibility and clarity for those in the sector. The Culture and Tourism Development Unit will work towards implementing this strategy beginning in 2023. With a review of update the existing policies and procedures. And then the next step will be create an inventory system and undertake a gap analysis of the art that is existing in the community. We are also working towards a new public art piece at the library and then at the cemetery and public works buildings when those projects move forward. These items and others will drive the community towards the overall goal of the strategy, which is that Art in Public Places program will be a catalyst for civic pride and cultural tourism growth. So, and in that vein, I just want to leave you with a quote from one of the artists who did a piece here in town. It's the Enduring Connections piece at Heritage Park. Art is about forging connections between places, cultures, ideas, between the past, present, and future, and most importantly, between people, which I think is really important in Stony Plain, that we're all about the community here, and that's what public art is about also. And that. Questions, comments?
Thank you for the presentation and bringing the art strategy forward. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to administration. I'm just curious about the rationale behind folding the mural program in with the art strategy.
Sure, thank you. Through Your Worship, Councillor Meyer, it's basically ease of policy and procedural documentation. So the idea of the mural program in the past versus what was the public art program currently, people don't see the murals as art for some reason. They view them as signage or they're just here. They're just embedded in the community. So part of it is to encourage the understanding or the education of the community, including administration, that they are art and that they do hold value. And combining that as an art in public places program will bring them into that, as opposed to them just being murals. And then the clarity, it will get rid of having two policies and procedures and 2 reserve policies as well, and combine it into having just one.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate I find it amazing to hear that murals aren't
Yeah.
quite seen that way, but it does kind of speak to, you know, the community. They have been such a regular thing in our community for so long. I mean, it's a nice problem to have that people just think it's a given.
Thank you. Councilor Hauser, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that I thought was a good thing that I saw in this was that in putting the murals under art in public places, it gives already an expectation that murals will be in public places. I know over the years there's been a few places. Folkestone Manor was, I think, one of those. There may have been another 1 or 2 where people wanted to possibly put a mural inside of a building that really isn't a public place. Public can access it, but that is also the home for seniors. And unless we're going to be definitive that the murals need to be in a place that people can see from the street or from the sidewalk, it wouldn't qualify probably under our program. Do you know of any place where we have allowed a publicly funded mural to be created on an inside of a building?
No. Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Hansard, no, we don't have any interior murals. We do have one interior piece of public art. And the reason it is inside is because it will degrade too quickly in the elements. And that is the piece, the Indigenous piece that's inside Heritage Park.
Okay. So I do like that it's, in putting it under this heading, the expectation is already there that the murals will be in publicly visible places. So I was pleased to see this report come forward in council package. And although it's a different concept, I like that there's a way to refer to all of our artwork. Murals has been near and dear to my heart, as it is many people in the community and on council, this council and past councils. So I do like that it's identified as, murals are identified as artwork. I've never thought of them as anything but artwork. So your comment really kind of caught me by surprise that there's anybody that thinks that they're not art. So I'm glad that that opportunity was here tonight for clarification for the public record that it is.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you very much for the presentation on the report. I don't as much have questions on the art strategy itself as I do on the public art policy. Thinking about, we do have some rather large capital projects coming forward. We currently have the policy in place which calls for the 1% of all new capital building budgets to be contributed to the public art in our community. I pulled up the policy on our website, and the policy is effective September 14th, 2015, with a future review date of 2019. I can't recall off the top of my head whether we did or did not review it in 2019, but if I'm following the same 4-year schedule, it would then be again for review in 2023. I'm just wondering if I can get a little bit of context around that. Was it reviewed in 2019 or was that delayed? And when will it come back to council for review again?
Through your worship, Councillor Laurie, it was not reviewed in 2019. Part of that, it was delayed as we were expecting to move into the new Arts, Culture, and Heritage Action Plan process in 2020, which we did. And then part of the 2020 recommendations were to review the public art policy, but also put this public art master plan in place. And it made sense to delay it until the master plan was completed. So that will be the first step moving forward after this evening, is to review the policy, look at it in more clarity in terms of the financial requirements, and then as well as clarity around what is a capital building, those sorts of things.
Further, if I can, Your Worship? Thank you. I'm curious if we have a timeline in consideration with that, and a reason that I ask is, a 1% of a potential $30 million recreation facility, $300,000 is a pretty significant amount of money. And obviously, we know that given the economic conditions, inflation, et cetera, we are facing a very difficult situation when it comes to the recreation center. Will that policy be reviewed before council sees the proposal for the recreation center to move forward to tender?
I don't know when that is, do you? To go to tender? Sorry. Through your worship, Councillor Laurie, I've just learned that that is scheduled to come to you in September, so I can align that request.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
I'm just curious about the wording of the, I'm not even sure if I'm going to pronounce it right, de-accessioning. I had to look that one up. In the definition I saw, sorry, and through you to administration, in the definition I saw, it speaks about specifically selling a piece of, no, this would be more like decommissioning, say. So just a follow-up question to that. Knowing that some of our murals specifically are quite treasured and around the community, I'm curious if say a mural was to be decommissioned, if that would just be handled by this policy, or if such a move would come to council before something like that was done.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Meyer, we don't currently have a procedure in place for de-accessioning, so that will be part of the policy review and procedure creation. De-accessioning can mean different things to different people, but in the arts, culture, and heritage sector, it generally means it's offered to another organization first. If it can't be saved, it's offered to another organization, and then if nobody else wants it, then it could be sold. Just to clarify that for you. In terms of the works that we have lost in the past, we have to be mindful of the fact that some of the older pieces are painted directly on the buildings, which we do not own. We do own the artwork, but we do not own the buildings. And so unless it is a removable piece, then it is up to the building owner to decommission it, as it will be. We can't necessarily stop, well, we could potentially stop the demolition of a building, but I mean, we haven't to date. I mean, one was the old high school, one was the motor inn. So I would assume that it would be dealt with via administration, but like if we had a piece that we were trying to save, unless we were then having to go to an outside organization to ask them to try and save it.
Thank you. And just one more, and just for clarity on in terms of trying to save artwork, that's what this policy would address, efforts to that we would take, and what limit we'd set on what was reasonable and the like?
Through you, Your Worship, the procedural document would clarify that. Yep.
Okay. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I can certainly appreciate the alignment of multiple strategies into one document and how that streamlines the process for us. I have just two things very quickly. Was just poking around on our website. We're just curious to see what we have in terms of a digital collection of our murals. I know you mentioned a couple that have been decommissioned, if you will, or no longer exist in our community. Do we have a system to maintain like a complete record digitally of the murals that currently exist and those that have been decommissioned?
Through your worship, we have them internally. We have photographs, high-resolution photographs of them, and know when they were created and by whom and when they were removed. We don't have that as a public feature at this point. We just have the current pieces that are available for viewing.
Okay, no, perfect, and I appreciate that. I think we have a digital mural guide as well that includes, you know, the majority, if not all of those images which are available. But it's great to know that they'll be maintained, you know, moving forward, even if it is internally, so that we have access to those murals. My second point is just a question, actually, and really piqued my interest as I read through our key priorities, and there was one that kind of stood out for me, and just looking for maybe a little bit more information on how this might play out in our community. But it's page 28 of our agenda package. Specifically, the seventh key priority, challenging the ideas of time and space. The first part of the explanation there says, invest in public art that does not look like art. And so to me, that sounds intriguing, but I don't know what that might look like in practice. And so just looking maybe for some comments about how this may play out in our community.
Thank you, through your worship. We already actually have a piece in our community that answers to that action. The bench that is in the newly created Oway Park is exactly an example of that. So even though it does technically look like art to the, you know, if you didn't know that it was artwork, you would say, oh, this is a cool rock bench. So that is what that is speaking to. So things that people might happen upon that they think is an interesting feature in the community, but might not necessarily see it as art, or that might not be the first thing that comes to their mind.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, and I had the opportunity to play all over that and sit on those benches when we had the grand opening. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? See none, I ask council to turn to page 52 of our agenda package. So I love this, what we heard, because it's actually a really good snapshot of what the respondents told what they liked about our murals and different things that are culture and art and for a round table. My question is, in terms of the response of 144 responses, was that an approximate number what staff was expecting, or were we expecting more? Because if we look at 144 responses in just, even in one subdivision, that's a small percentage of a subdivision, so never mind the entire community.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wouldn't say that we had an expectation of a particular number. I don't think we ever do necessarily going into public participation. What I can say is that that number of responses is relatively in line with the number of responses that this unit has gotten in their other strategy engagement processes as well.
Okay, thank you. And I know for the last little while, our men staff has been pushing Be in the Know kind of campaign to make sure that everybody's involved in what's happening. Was the survey pushed out on that as well to see if we can get like a garner feedback in terms of percentage? I think a lot of advertising says if you get 1% back, that's pretty good. So did we use that policy as well, because we can track what comes back to that?
It was, sorry, to Your Worship, it was happening at the same time. So the campaign for Be in the Know was in its infancy, or the door knockers were just going out at that time. This was pushed out via all of our regular communication channels, as well as I mentioned via paper survey and in-person engagement at events.
Okay. Thank you. And onto page 29 of 111. Definitely appreciate the fact that, as mentioned by members council, to bring all the policies into one. And also we're going to put the reserve into one as well, the mural reserve and the public art reserve. The question regarding the 10% allocation of the reserve fund for maintenance reserve on that. So currently, my question is, what is the dollar amounts right now in the maintenance fund right now for murals? And if we merge those two, is it 10% or is it more than 10%?
Thank you, Your Worship. The current amount in the mural reserve is approximately $60,000. The amount in the public art reserve is somewhere around $200,000. So it's slightly higher than what would be 10% of the two combined. However, we have been using the mural reserve for things other than just conservation. For example, if we're installing a new piece, such as the one at the Good Samaritan, we have been using those funds for installation as well. So it currently would be slightly more than 10%, but we also have been saving, for lack of a better word, the public art reserve funds to do a larger project rather than doing 4 or 5 small projects over that many years.
Okay. That's a good explanation. So then my next question that follows up that is, if we combine the two reserves, there'd be $260,000?
Approximately. Yeah.
And based on the concept here, that means we would earmark $26,000 as 10% for a maintenance reserve. What happens if council, again, as mentioned here, if, for example, the public works building goes ahead, the rec center goes ahead, now we've increased it by, say, another $500,000 or, so then does that public maintenance reserve become $100,000?
To your worship, that would be the intention. However, just for clarity purposes, the cemetery project and the public works project are not considered capital builds because one doesn't technically have a building and one is technically not accessible to the public. So if and when we do public art on those locations, it will come out of the reserve fund as opposed to being a capitally funded project. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, then my next scenario on that is, since there's $260,000 that are currently in there, if we merge them, and if council approves the public art project, that, for example, costs $250,000 that we chose to come out of this reserve, does that mean then the maintenance reserve drops down to 10% of what's left, which is $1,000?
The maintenance reserve is being followed. So the maintenance reserve would be tracked so that we know how much. It's based on the purchase price of the piece of art. So, for example, if the purchase piece of a piece of art is $100,000, then $10,000 of that original purchase price would then be for conservation. It would be retained there and tracked until such time as we need to utilize it.
So then,
so we would never spend more than, like, we would always have a maintenance reserve.
Okay, so in that scenario, then we would actually, for example, if we merged, we have $260,000. If we left it at 10%, it'd be $26,000 for mural maintenance reserve. If we spent money to do some other public art projects, that $26,000, that's 10% right now, will not shrink less than that.
Correct. Because it's being tracked.
Okay. Okay, with that, then I'm okay with that, because I think, as mentioned around the table here, is the mural program is very dear to our community and how we kind of portray our residents, our history, and where we plan to go forward. And I'm going to make sure that there is enough money in there to maintain those murals. And as long as we can maintain a reserve for that, the maintenance. But I do have concerns that if it's 10%, then if 10,000 is in there, then it's only $1,000. If there's $1 million in there, there's $100,000 for, like, trying to figure out that.
But it's not, so the 10% is a recommendation. So as I mentioned, as an example, if we purchase a $100,000 piece of art, we put aside $10,000 for maintenance. That $10,000 is in the maintenance reserve until such time as it needs to be touched. So it also adds value over every time we purchase something new, if that's more clarity for you.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense now, just to make sure that it didn't float up and down with the actual reserve balance itself.
Right, correct.
Okay. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Councillor Hanser, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure of the exact page. I believe in one or two places there's reference made in this report about creating art in new subdivisions, new buildings. That, I'm hoping, is not suggesting that we will not look at putting art in already existing neighborhoods or buildings that already are existing, because that would almost seem to me not fair. If it's an outreach to bring the new neighborhoods into what Stony Plain is all about, I certainly appreciate that. But could you clarify, please, what is meant in those areas?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Hansard, I'm not sure where you're looking.
I think it is early on in the report.
Yeah, on page 32 of 111, there is a point that says build programs to bring art to every neighborhood, utilizing the inventory and associated gap analysis. So what the inventory and the gap analysis will tell us is where the art is currently located, and if there are clusters of it, which, downtown would be one of those clusters, and then where we would look to place art into the future. The policy itself, the public art policy, the 0.1% of the operating budget that goes into the reserve on an annual basis is specifically for placement of art in locations where no new building is happening or throughout the community. So if there's no capital building happening in that area, then we can utilize the reserve funds to put art in a place that already exists.
Okay. And one other question, Mr. Mayor. Is there any inventory that will include items that were not necessarily created by the town of Stony Plain, but that are indeed still works of art? I'm thinking of the exterior wall sculpture that is on the west side of the old fire hall over here facing Parkland Potters Guild. I think the Potters Guild spearheaded that project and put that on the wall there. And I do know there was another place in here that referenced something about other people creating art. There was work put on the gazebo at Rotary Park that involved, I believe, handprints and things like that on tiles that were inset. Are these being referenced or a record of them kept in conjunction with what we're doing here? Or if anybody creates something like that on their own, it's just on their own and it just happens to be, but we don't claim it as an artwork?
Through your worship, Deputy Mayor Hansard. So the one piece that you referenced, at the Potters Guild, that is actually considered a mural that was done in partnership with the town and the Potters Guild. The other piece that you referenced, the tile work that was taken off of the gazebo in Rotary Park, I believe we retained those tiles when that project or when the park was updated. So there is a possibility that they could be reinstalled somewhere else or back in the park. As for the second part of your question related to if somebody else creates a piece of art, there isn't a plan currently to include that in a guide that the town would produce. However, that's a definite possibility in the future. We do often reference the horse and rider piece, for example, that's at the Multicultural Heritage Center as a point of interest in town. So we do utilize those for tourism promotion reasons, but we don't currently have a public art guide. We only have a mural guide. So as we expand that program, then we can possibly include pieces that are created by other people or on other sites.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if I could make a comment to that. I certainly appreciate that the town may not want to grab all of these things and then somehow the expectation be set up with the public that we're going to oversee the care and maintenance of these things. But certainly things like the horse, did you call it horse and rider, at the Multicultural Heritage Center, that is a really outstanding, popular piece of artwork that we didn't create. But I'm wondering if there could be a process where people could apply to have their artwork listed somewhere, but no expectation that we're going to be the caretakers of those pieces. I would just hate to see them not captured and then visitors to our town maybe be looking for sculptures, and those, you know, that is certainly a piece that is worth people going out of their way to have a look at and maybe do some business at the Multicultural Center with it. And as time goes on, I'm sure there will be other things that people will create, because once they get bitten by the artistic bug, it just keeps biting people. And we like that. We want the love of art to grow in our community. I think that's a whole lot of what the Cultural Roundtable has been about, and all the artwork that has gone on in the town of Stony Plain. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? See none, thank you for your presentation. Councilor Anderson for the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Town Council accept the art in public places strategy for information this evening.
Thank you. So, Council, you had a good presentation, some good questions for clarity and understanding. Any debate on the motion to accept for information? Okay. See none, call the question. All in favor? That's carried. 9.2. Now we're talking about the historic resource policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the rest of council and fellow administration. In 2008, the town developed a municipal historic designation policy to establish a process through which historic places in the town of Stony Plain could be recognized, designated, and rehabilitated. The scope of the policy included responsibilities of the town, property owners, and the Multicultural Heritage Center. To date, the policy has been enacted one time and was utilized to protect the homestead located on the original town site. And the incentive program that is noted in the policy has never been accessed. The policy was slated to be reviewed due to its age and the need to bring it in line with the municipality's current policy standards. The review was also included as a recommendation in the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Action Plan. Having a historic resources policy in place allows the municipality to be immediately reactive to any property owner wishing to designate their building or property. And additionally, it provides a vehicle for the municipality to be proactive if a historically valuable building or property is in jeopardy of being destroyed. As noted in the files that were provided to you, many of the changes made to the document were undertaken to better align it with the current policy standards, and no major changes were made to the scope of the policy. Additional changes included the title change, removal of statements that were procedural in nature, and the removal of some redundant statements. The policy will be further transacted by administration through a procedural document. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Members of Council, questions for clarity and understanding. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
This is not a question, Mr. Mayor. I won't use this word very often from this seat on council, but I was ecstatic to see this report come in our council package. There's a long history about identifying properties of significance in our community. And I'm thinking back to the years that Dr. Margaret Knupp worked at the Multicultural Heritage Center. She undertook a project on her own, I believe. I'm not sure if there was any public dollars that went into it, where she actually identified, to her knowledge at that date, historic properties in Stony Plain, what they were about, when they were built, all kinds of things. And I know that that report was handed over to our then director, I think we're not called general manager at that time, of Planning and Infrastructure, Ross Sharp. A few years after I had been working with Dr. Knupp on a couple of things, and one of them was identifying some of these buildings, because as a realtor, I had gone into one home that had historic significance and was standing on the chopping block of being torn down. This particular property, I believe, was 4808 50th Avenue. It's the two-story green and white house in very bad disrepair opposite Rexall drugstore on 50th Avenue. 50th Avenue, yes. And that home, I found out in digging for information on it, I went to the Multicultural Center, and that's how I engaged Dr. Knupp at that time. I discovered that that home, for instance, was built in 1908. It was built by the original Mr. Nuremberg, and it housed their construction company on the main floor, but the Stony Plain School District took up residence in the upper floor. And in that upper floor, there are some very unique features built into that, that area that just completely wowed me. A filing system, a horizontal filing system where papers would be shoved in a little thing. There's a whole wall of those up there. I'm trying to find out, what are those? Why are they there? Who would have built it? That's when I found out that it was indeed the Stony Plain School District, long before Parkland School Division was ever created. So there's homes like that that I thought, why do we not have some way to identify these, at least identify them? So if somebody is going to come in and want to tear it down, they at least know what they're applying for a demolition permit to destroy. And Dr. Knupp had a method whereby some kind of a plaque, I believe, a metal plaque hooked into the ground so it couldn't be so easily stolen, could have been put on the property so that even if a building goes away, the location is identified as a place where certain things happen. There are other buildings like where Oppertshauser House was originally located, not on the multicultural grounds. The Victorian home that stands where the health unit was built, that was one of the westernmost Victorian homes until you get to Vancouver, that was in Alberta, in Canada actually, and it got torn down for the health center to be built. And there are 4 or 5 others, 4900 50th Avenue, the White House, right up back here behind us, I believe, may have had significance as a livery stable or something. So there are many of these properties, and when I saw this come forward, I thought, oh my goodness, somebody is pulling this, whether it's that document or not, pulling it out of the past and bringing it forward so that some action can be taken on this extremely important work that Dr. Knupp put together. And I just want to commend our cultural development officer and anybody else that she worked with for pulling this out of thin air. I also didn't know if that was just all her work or if planning and infrastructure was involved, because I know the departments are working quite good together to grab things that might fall through the cracks. But it made me really, really happy to see that. And I hope somebody if I touch base with Margaret, I hope to find out that maybe she is aware that her work was not in vain, and that maybe we're using some of that in helping to identify these properties. And I do have about 5 or 6 others that I'd be glad to put in front of the responsible people here at the town. And on almost all of them, I came into, had an opportunity to be inside of in my other line of work. One of the things that perplexed me on this, though, was the incentive that is being proposed to be given to people so that they have a reason to even want their property identified. First, as a municipally significant or designated property, which I think is a whole different ball of wax from provincial and national. When you go to those upper levels, now you're getting into a hornet's nest, because then those people, if they receive a designation, they're forever restricted on the kinds of renovations, exterior, etc., that they can do, the colors of paint that they can use, replacement, fascia, types of roofing material. There's a lot of restrictions on it, and I know some people might be hesitant, but the province used to give a grant to people who wanted to engage in some restoration on their properties. If I read it correctly, we're talking about a small amount of money I calculated 5% of taxes in a given year for up to 5 years. If a property had a $3,000 tax per year on it, that would be, unless my math is messed up, $150 a year. And yet we're setting up a system whereby the town, people have to give a report to the town, and in order to get that incentive, and we're going to monitor them to see what kind of repairs are being done for this incentive money. And I really had to pause. I mean, you can't even buy a door for $150. And that's if your tax, the municipal portion of the tax, is $3,000 for a year. And I'm just wondering, are we really going to set up a whole monitoring system and expect reports from people to get a tax incentive to step forward to have their property named as a significant property or historically significant property, never mind a designation, which is capital D designation? Are we really expecting that for $150 or less, or maybe a bit more, per year for 5 years, that's going to be incentive enough to run a whole program around that and to cause people to have to turn in reports telling you how they spent their $100, $150, or $200 a year? I mean, I sat reading this going, what on earth? So if there could be maybe something shared with us to help us understand a little better what the whole incentive idea was, and what are we hoping to accomplish by that? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the development officer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That was a long recap of the scenarios, and maybe the question will go right now to the development officer or manager. I'm not sure.
Development officer. Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor Hansard, the incentive program that is included in the policy is not new. It's strictly it was in the existing policy, so it's just been put back into the new policy as it was. So I understand that 5% is not a very huge amount of money, but the program is not new. So the policy was not reviewed with that lens in mind. It was simply reviewed to bring it into alignment with the new standards that the municipality has around how policies are written.
Okay.
Okay, so again, page 63, Councillor Hansard, is the old policy, and it references the 5% rebate. And also page 66 of the revised policy, which administration is asking us to review and look at, refers to that same point. I do not see anywhere in the policy regarding a $3,000 minimum for taxes.
No, it was just a number I used as an example.
Yeah.
To see how much, Mr. Mayor, some person might get if their municipal portion of taxes was $3,000, they get $150 a year. If this policy was put together 3 decades ago, maybe that seemed like a lot of money then, but it's certainly not a lot of money now. And I think there is a comment in the report that only one property has come forward to be designated. Maybe that's why people aren't bothering.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Let me see. Yes, page 66, please. Members of council and to admin staff. Under 5.2, it says the standard says only resources listed in the inventory of historical resources to be considered for the historic resources designation. So question is, do we have an inventory?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the inventory is actually the document that Councillor Hansard was referring to. So we are in possession of the work that Dr. Knopp did many years ago. It hasn't been updated. However, you know, there are not new heritage homes being built. So we are in possession of that inventory.
Okay, and with that, will that be added to this policy? So it's for easy reference for ourselves as members of council, our residents, and then to future staff members?
At this time, it's considered property of the Multicultural Heritage Center / an internal document of the town. However, the goal of the policy / associated program would be that people know that their property is a heritage property. Speaking to Councillor Hansard's comments about if people knew, maybe they would move forward with the designation. So there is a possibility that the program becomes more proactive, but that hasn't been explored to date.
Okay. Thank you. And looking at page 62 of the old policy, where it has the chart of actions and responsibilities, it clearly lays out the responsibilities of the Multicultural Heritage Center, the town of Stony Plain, and then the site owner, and then also the Multicultural Heritage Center. And the new policy doesn't directly reference that in terms of the responsibilities. Does administration feel that moving into the new policy still covers those responsibilities and roles of both Town Stony Plain, the site owner, and the Multicultural Heritage Center?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the responsibilities that are listed in the old policy are procedural in nature, and as we do not include procedure and policy documents any longer, they will be moved into the procedure as the program develops.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments for clarity, understanding? Okay. Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. But listening, I thought I had a good handle on what we were doing here. But listening to the discussion, I have a few questions now. Just for clarity in regards to this document that is in possession of the Heritage Museum. Sorry, who has
Multicultural Heritage
Multicultural
Center?
Center. Is it our, if I understand this right, it is our intent to let the people whose properties are on that document know that their property is potentially a historic site. But reading our new policy that we intend to enact, they would have to apply and okay, so with that in mind, I'm just curious, when I read the lead sheet, under option 1, repeal municipal historic designation policy, and under there it then says the implication of this decision is that no further property buildings within the town of Stony Plain will be able to be protected through municipal designation. I'm having a hard time kind of squaring that now.
So I guess the question is, will there be more inventory or list of properties that have significant impact within our community that maybe the multicultural center adds to the inventory, the quasi-unofficial inventory list? And if that policy is, the comment is in there, that means we can't add any more.
Yeah, is that,
To both of you. We can add to the inventory, so only things that have been designated make it onto the register. So they sound like the same thing, but they're not. So the inventory is a list of properties or buildings that have heritage significance. The register is a list of properties that have been designated. So currently our register is short, it's one property. The inventory is 30 or 40 properties. So the intent is not to necessarily notify the current owners of those properties that they have a heritage building, but potentially make that list public so they could research themselves whether their building has the potential to become designated.
okay.
Is that,
Yeah, I think I get what's.
okay.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate your question there, Councillor Meyer. It just kind of demonstrates your evolution from being a rookie to more of a sophomore member of council. As you know, we all read our agenda packages. We have our own perceptions, understanding of what we read, and it's good to hear the council conversation to actually change that or bring some more questions to mind. So an excellent reference to the maturation of yourself as a council member. Any other questions, comments? Okay. And I'll go back to the inventory because I think it was asked a question. So this inventory is not really quite ours. It is housed in an internal document of the Multicultural Heritage Center, but we will be relying on that to, if somebody wants to come to make a designation of a municipal historic destination policy. On page 67, it says, where is it? Yes, on page 67, it says, if a property is supposed to be designated, it has to be passed through a bylaw of the town of Stony Plain. Okay. Which only council can approve bylaws to make that designation. And there's a whole bunch of parameters. So if somebody does not upkeep that property and it comes to derelict, then because that house is designated through a bylaw within the town of Stony Plain, then does the town of Stony Plain assume responsibility, maintenance, and ownership of that if it becomes to that level of disrepair?
Thank you, Your Worship. The short answer is no. We do not take ownership of that property if it becomes derelict. We do place the designation on the land title, so the property cannot be demolished without the bylaw being repealed, and that is up to council whether that happens or not. We can't make somebody upkeep their building necessarily, although, you know, I would assume that a person who is wishing to designate their property as a heritage property would have some level of interest in maintaining it as such. I mean, unless they sell it, in which case we don't have control over that, but.
Right, and I appreciate the commentary. However, my mind goes a little bit further down. When a building is classified as part of the inventory, they come to council with the proper application. Council approves that in bylaw. The home is changed a couple times, is sold a few times. The fifth owner down, maybe 25, 30 years down the road, chooses not to upkeep it. And as being a historical resource or a bylaw that says Town of Stony Plain, this is a designated building, how would it look in terms of the public when council makes a bylaw to remove that so that building can be demolished?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a risk that we take if we do designate buildings. So the existing policy, the existing designation that's in place is on a property that hasn't been updated in the last 20 years, but it continues to be designated. If they came to us and said, you know, we wish to have this bylaw removed, That would be up to council's discretion if they would agree with that or not. And the risk in that would be the public perception of allowing a heritage property to be demolished. To date, we are allowing heritage properties to be demolished without any recognition or consideration.
Okay, I do see in this policy, I do see with that parameters in there, a financial risk for the town of Stony Plain. In terms of, let's say 30 years down the road, we have 15 historical homes that are designated under this policy, and they're all becoming in disrepair. The current owners have walked away from their property. And in terms of a political lens, if council was to make a bylaw to repeal all those, to have those demolished, I think there might be an outcry from the residents in terms of maintaining those historical homes, and then the town taking ownership, which has then a huge financial liability within the town of Stony Plain. So personally, in terms of looking at the fiscal responsibility of the town, due diligence, I don't think that should be in there in terms of the bylaw. I'm not too sure if administration has anything else to say, or members of council to address that. Looking at our fiduciary responsibility, that does have a long-term impact within the town of Stony Plain.
Your worship, sorry, if I could just ask a question of clarity. Are you suggesting that the town does not create a bylaw to designate the property? Is that the question or the suggestion?
That's correct.
So that is actually governed by the province. So in order to designate a property, the municipality has to create a bylaw to do so. So if you wish to move forward with any designations, that piece is governed by the province through to the municipality.
Okay. And with that same thing, I realize that some other municipalities, properties have been designated to the government of Alberta, but not the municipality.
Correct.
So can we not reference our bylaw to that, so if anybody wants to, we will support their application for that designation through the provincial government, and therefore then it's not on us to repeal the bylaw to have that historical building knocked down?
I would have to look into that further. I don't have an answer to that question, I'm sorry. I don't know if they can be tied together or if the provincial program has different requirements to become designated than a municipality, for example. And the reason I say that is because the points of the property that are important to make it designatable in the municipality might be specific to the municipality versus the province as a whole. Does that make sense? Sorry.
It does. I'm just looking at the two differences because
Yeah.
well, that's not in the old policy.
Which part?
Just making sure that we're not responsible for it, right?
I'm sorry, which part is not in the old policy?
For a bylaw for have a house that's designated?
It is. Sorry, just let me find it.
Your Worship, if I may provide some maybe comment and context at this point. I believe the question being asked or the concern being noted is, I would say that's a valid across the board concern when it comes to the designation of any historic property. That designation, whether municipal or provincial, does carry some weight, and which is why I think partly you have not seen a lot of these, and in fact only one in the course of this community's history. What's in front of you now, the policy itself is just outlining the process as to how something could come before council. And the fact that it requires a bylaw would, in essence, in theory, provide both administration and the council of the day the opportunity to understand the specific implications, the specific costs, and so on. So if I may, just a bit of advice to council. What you're looking at is the broad policy framework and not the specific individuals of any given property. And I would suggest, again, this is the framework for how things could end up in the chambers, but not a definitive answer to every potential outcome. I'll stop there, Your Worship.
Thank you. I appreciate all the commentary and definitely looking forward to the bylaw coming. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of thoughts. I want to get clarification, if I could, through you to the development officer. Ms. LaBerge, would each property need its own bylaw to have it named as a significant property, historically significant property?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Each property would come in with a application.
So landowners would not be surprised that they find on their title that they've got a designation that would prevent them from ever having it demolished. And neither would removing the designation for one remove the designation for all, because that might make some people upset. I think semantics comes into play here, because years ago, and things may have changed when I first looked into this, municipals naming or identifying property as historically significant was a whole different thing than having a designation put on that property by the province or by Canada. Those other two, the higher level designations, are pretty impressive, but there's such constriction on the landowner, the property owner, about what can happen with that home ever. And a municipally identified, or a property being identified as a municipally significant, historically significant property is a different thing. It still can be put on title, but if the home goes to be sold, a person receiving that home is going to have a real estate lawyer look at that title and say, here's a caveat, or here is whatever word they want to give to it in legal terms, that would prevent you from having free will over that property, that building. So a person would at least be apprised of what they're buying. A lot of people change these properties and don't have a clue themselves. So when they pass the property on to a new owner, the new owner doesn't have a clue. At least putting it on title tells somebody that this is an important property. They may still choose not to do anything with it, but at least they're in the know on the property. There's nothing worse than realizing that something was important and it got damaged or destroyed. I'm with Mayor Choi, actually, when it comes to what kind of obligations are there. Because some of these properties, like the development officer said, we're not creating new historically significant properties. What's here is here. We may not know all of them. Some have been identified. There may be others that, a handful maybe over years that could come forward as new information is found out. But we're not building right now historically significant properties in this day and age that are going to be recognized as such. It would be down the road 50, 60, 100 years that something might be designated as historically significant, such as where the mayor lived or something like that. But the thing that I think is important is that people at least know. And when we sell our downtown for tourism, it's important, I think, to let people realize that this town has a long, long history, and that individual properties that were here from way back at the turn of the century, of the night, going into the 1900s, were in existence. Who owned them, what they were about, and that kind of thing. But I certainly don't want to see the town on the hook for any kind of repairs or maintenance on these properties. And some of them, truthfully, are in such bad repair, there's hardly anything you can do but demolish them. And it's a sad thing, but that's the way it goes. when they have been allowed to fall into disrepair decade after decade after decade. So that home over here that I spoke of earlier is well over 100 years old, 120, 115 years old. So I still think it would be nice to have the property designated or named, identified as a significant property, and maybe we have to just be real careful what language we use. Thank you for hearing me on this. I told you I was ecstatic about this, but there are some little quirky things that need to be worked out.
Councillor Loyens?
Thank you, Worship. So just for my own understanding, what happens if, so we have our inventory of about 30-ish properties, our registration of one property. What happens if these 30-ish properties do go in for registration, they get their little certificate, their plaque, but become into disarray? Then what is the next step? Because you don't want to repeal the bylaw, which we already talked about, but 50 years from now, the house is sold a dozen times, then what? Where do we find ourselves?
Through your worship, Councillor Loyens, that's a good question. I won't be here in 50 years, but, well, not here at this table. I don't have an answer for you. I think in other municipalities, if it's a case-by-case basis. So if it comes in front of us and we have to decide whether, we repeal the bylaw or there's no process in place, and we haven't explored a process whereby the municipality would be able to state, you must repair XYZ on this building because it is designated.
And then, follow up, on page 67, it says that if the designation has been rescinded, any incentives received by the owner must be paid back to the town. So house sells a dozen times, new owners decide they don't want it designated anymore, they now have to pay back whatever incentive the original designator received. Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, your worship, I believe it's not stated there specifically, but the intention is that that would be the owner who placed the designation.
Okay.
So if the existing owner who paid the taxes received an incentive and then demolished the house or without approval or whatever, then they would be required to pay it back, not a secondary owner.
Because it just says if destroyed or if the designation bylaw is rescinded by the town. So.
Yeah, that can be,
key.
I can clarify that point if
Thank you.
you wish.
That's all.
Councillor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I was just reviewing the Province of Alberta Historical Resources Act in light of some of the comments you made. And there is an article in there, and I'm just curious to see if administration's had the opportunity to review that and how that may impact it. And it's in regards to compensation. And it's basically talking about the sections of where if a municipality does pass a bylaw designating a piece of property as a historic area or as a historic resource. And it talks about if a bylaw under section 26 or 27 decreases the economic value of a building, structure, or land that is within the area designated by the bylaw, the council shall, by bylaw, provide the owner of that building, structure, or land with compensation for the decrease in economic value. If the council and owner cannot agree on the compensation payable under subsection 1, the owner or council may apply to the Land Compensation Board established under the Expropriation Act, determine the amount of compensation payable by the council to the owner to decrease in economic value. Long story short, listening to Deputy Mayor Hansard talking about a specific property, I'm curious at this point in time, if that property owner were to come forward to the municipality asking for that historical designation to be placed on the property, council then passes that. In turn, by doing so and placing that designation on the property, if that's in a redevelopment area, such as the Old Town South redevelopment plan area, where that property could be developed into a in the terms of this, what do they call it, higher economic value, does that then not put the municipality at the risk of being required to compensate that property owner for the difference in value between the current structure that is now designated as a historical resource and what the potential of that property under a redevelopment agreement could be?
Through your worship, I don't have an answer to that. I would have to review the provincial requirements and see if there's a timeline stipulated, or if it's existing owner, or similar to the question that is answered for Councillor Loynes. I think part of the conversation would be is if we knew that building was in an area slated for redevelopment, or in a redevelopment area, such as the one that Councillor Hansard has been speaking of, that would be a consideration during the bylaw review, prior to the bylaw being approved, the risk associated.
Thank you for that, and your worship, if I may. Yeah, I'm feeling we may be a little preemptive in where the policy sits right now in front of us, because that piece to me is relatively concerning, because that does put the municipality in what I would consider a position of risk. Because any designation then that we as a council authorize places the town in a position where we may end up in a compensation battle to a future property owner, or even the current property owner, who maybe even requested of council of the day to place that on there. And that's where I would be much more inclined to where Mayor Choi talked about, if we do have the ability through the provincial act to have it named under provincial act rather than under a municipal bylaw, I'd be much more supportive of a process that encouraged that rather than under a municipal bylaw.
Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Just a general comment. Well, I appreciate all of council's discussion on this. I would just remind us that in the time that we had the previous, or the current policy since '08, we've had one property even take us up on this. So while I don't disagree that, there are risks there, I think that we would have an appropriate time to weigh those when we came forward, when the bylaw would need to be passed to designate the property. And then, like I say, considering it's been in place now for 15 years and we've only had one property owner come forward on it, I would rate the risk low in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Now, yeah, questions for clarity and understanding, because this is a kind of revised, updated policy. I think it's taking the old policy from 2008 and making it up to date to what we are used to seeing now as 2023 members of council. Again, this is built in for review in 4 years, which is 2027. So I think some of the concerns that council may have in terms of a little bit of risk, or how does it actually fine tune, definitely an opportunity for members of council to approve the policy so we can update the existing one from 2008, and then again revisit and during the future review in 2027. Deputy Mayor?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I promise this will be my last comment. I still think the problem is in using the word designate. So, just because they've used that word provincially and nationally does not mean we have to do that municipally. Perhaps that could be run by a real estate lawyer, a good lawyer, who could maybe answer those questions. The city of Edmonton also has a lot of historically significant designation on property, homes and public buildings. And I know that they would probably have some track record with how did they avoid liability for things like that. And keep in mind that any council of the day has a right to say, we choose not to grant this status to this property because maybe we perceive that it could become a hornet's nest when it comes to who's going to fix the property up. I know I wouldn't want to be on the hook for fixing up the property that I mentioned several times here this evening. It's a lot of money. But council does have the ability to say no to any individual property and yes to other properties. One of the things that I think is important is that we not let the opportunity slide by. I hate to see us rush into this when there are some legitimate questions around what does this mean for the town of Stony Plain. But I also would hate, worse than that, to see this go on a shelf for another 4 years because we have a time to review it already preset 4 years down the road. I definitely would like to see us have this looked into, perhaps, and just see if we can just clean up our language. And I still am in favor of identifying the properties, but maybe not giving them a designation and not implicating the town to have to pay for anything. Then the very small incentive to allow their home to be identified is different and maybe speaks to that, but we won't be creating a committee to go in and review what repairs they did. Give us a list of the repairs you did for $150 or $200. That makes absolutely no sense. So I'm just thinking that there's a way to do this and not let the thought process be lost if we clean up the language and don't try to overextend ourselves into the realm of designation, which is so easy to confuse with provincial and national.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just want to touch back. I'm still a little confused on the point in regards to the inventory of historic resources. As I'm reading through, 5.3 on page 66 states the town of Stony Plain will maintain, update, and review the inventory and the register of historic resources. So my understanding is the inventory of historic resources is the list that was referred to that is currently held in the possession of the Multicultural Heritage Center. And then the register of historic resources are ones that have actually had the designation placed upon it. But what I'm hearing is that the town of Stony Plain does not have possession, technically, I guess, of that list. And I'm more so confused as to why that list would not be included as an attachment on this policy, so that anybody actually reviewing this policy would have a list of the properties that have been identified in the inventory to understand if the property that they're looking at would even be eligible.
Through you, Your Worship, we do have possession of the list. It's written in pencil and has photographs attached to it, so it hasn't been digitized to date. Making that list public is definitely something that is a possibility. It is a public document, like anyone could go to the Multicultural Heritage Center and ask to look at it. It's not an internal document there. For us, it's an internal document because they've shared it with us. As we move forward, the multi will no longer retain the procedural piece of the inventory. That will come to the town, and we will work with the multi on the research side of it. In terms of it being included with the policy, I don't believe it's a policy document. I believe it's a program document. But somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. That's my...
Okay. Just, I would kind of, if we're going to refer to in one of our policies, then there should be an appendix or a schedule or attachment so that we can refer to it. Having us rely on a inventory, which is quasi open to us, I guess that's how we can use it internally, but we can't share it because it's not our public document.
Currently.
Okay, so maybe we should work on having the Multicultural Center to give it to us or gift it to us so that we can actually refer to it. So if we're going to have it in our policy, then we should actually be able to show it or share it.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Like, it's, as I said, it is publicly accessible via the Multicultural Center at this time. We only currently have it as an internal document, and part of that is that it just hasn't been created as a publicly accessible piece as of yet. To me, that would be part of the procedural document. It would be an ever-changing piece, so it hasn't been updated in many years. There are a number of buildings that are on it that no longer exist, so that work needs to be done in conjunction with the Multicultural Heritage Center, as they are the holders of the archives.
Okay, so I think in terms of 5.2, so the only resource listed in the inventory for historic resources, I think we can put a parentheses after that saying, or hosted or housed or maintained by the Multicultural Heritage Center. And then it gives us the reference to go back to them, because if you read that, it doesn't say that it's held off-site. Like, if you read the policy, it looks like it's all ours.
That's the intention moving forward.
Okay, so the intention is for us to eventually get that.
To bring it into the program, into the procedural
Okay.
documents.
So can we add that there and then remove that, the reference to the Multicultural Heritage Center after we brought it in-house, after when we do a review in 2027?
Yes?
Okay, so that's a possibility. I think just provides a little more clarity for members of council and for members of the public that do see the policy, and then they can come and ask us where the policy is or where that resource is, and they can be directed over there. Okay, another question regarding terms of the incentives. Yeah. It's only mentioned here, it's only for 5 years. Is that the industry norm for other municipalities?
Through your worship, or to your worship, that is how the policy was written in the past. So no proactive research was done to bring the policy into alignment with other municipalities.
Okay. Looking through the other side of the lens, if a property owner comes forward to have their property designated, I think, as long as it's designated, because it's actually a bylaw that we pass, then I think that incentive should be until that bylaw is removed. I think it's just fair in terms of what Councillor Hanson, Deputy Mayor, said. The amount of money we're talking about in terms of the municipal portion is very, very limited in terms of that. But if that historical designation stays on until we actually repeal it, the bylaws of the council, then we should give that incentive until that is repealed. I'm not too sure how members of council see or feel about that, but that's something that I'd like to make a motion to change when we stop debating it. Councillor Marr?
Just in regards to that point, would the intention then be, because there is one property that currently does have some level of designation, and I believe that they probably would have already used up their 5 years. No?
No. Through the presentation, they've applied for the designation, but they've never applied for the incentive program.
Oh, okay.
So that might be an opportunity to have them come forward, or another property.
Okay, well then.
Okay. Town manager?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment here. I believe when we brought this into the chambers, we were bringing it in as a sort of straight from what it was to, update the formats. Council has asked a number of what I would consider actually broader policy questions. And to that end, Your Worship, we can certainly take this back, take some of the input into consideration, and bring something back that provides a bit more of a policy perspective. Again, this was essentially brought in as a cleanup, so to speak, from the 08 policy. I think, honestly, Your Worship, I'm kind of confused on a few things, and I don't like feeling confused on a policy item in front of the chamber. So I would appreciate an opportunity to maybe take another look at this and bring it back to council in reasonable due course.
Okay. No, I appreciate those comments, and I think when we debated the motion, if a few things did not get amended, then that was my next course of action. Thank you. Any more questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
And just a very quick comment, and appreciate the town manager's comment there about taking it back in light of some of the discussion that's been had. And as part of that review, I certainly would agree with Councillor Hansard's, comments earlier in the discussion about the incentive that currently exists in Stony Plain. And, it really isn't an incentive at all in terms of the amount that it is. And, a quick scan of some of our municipal neighbors have things from, direct grants to 50% of rehabilitation costs to property tax payments, going on to a 10-year period to help cover some of the maintenance, et cetera. But very maybe generous compared to the 5% of municipal tax that's been presented here. And so certainly something that I would like to see a part of that discussion before it comes back into chambers here.
That's a good comment. I think the conversation will be held around here. I think administration brings it back. We don't know exactly what that percentage is, so I think if you have a number or a comment in terms of that, put it forward, because that's what we'll have to, administration has to listen to. And when they bring the policy back, if it's 10% or 50%, other members of council might not agree with that, and then we have the same issue for the debate. So any thoughts? Give us some thought.
Well, there you go. You speak up and all of a sudden you're put on the spot. The policies that I've looked at just in the discussion as it's happening were between 33 and 50% of the total maintenance or rehabilitation cost over a 10-year period as a percentage of the taxable assessment on the property. And so, I think 5% is light. I think 50% is a lot. And so just for discussion's sake amongst council, I'm going to go in the middle with 33 and make that recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for your comments. Any other questions, clarity, understanding? Okay, thank you for your presentation, and I think it was well worth bringing it forward. As you know, as you mentioned, it has not been reviewed or updated since 2008, and as you can tell, that council does have some questions of clarity and understanding on that. In terms of what the town manager said, is it appropriate that we do not make a motion and just skip this, or do we have to make a motion because it is on our agenda?
Through your worship to council, I think it would be appropriate to make a motion to refer the matter back to staff, and staff will bring it back once they've had a chance to review and amend based on council discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, Councillor Laurie, I'll ask you to make the motion to refer.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I move that Town Council refer the Municipal Historic Resources Policy C-CD-058 back to administration for further review, to bring it back to council with the input from the feedback heard tonight.
Thank you very much, members of council. Great conversation and asking questions for clarity and understanding of the policy. Any other debate on the motion to refer? Okay. Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Let's take a quick recess and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back to council chambers, and continuing on with our agenda. Looking at 9.3 is the application for the Alberta Community Partnership. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Worship. This evening, we have for your consideration a request for an endorsement of an application for funding to the Alberta Community Partnerships Program from the Alberta Mid-Size City Mayor's Caucus. Just for council's background information, the Alberta Mid-Size City Mayor's Caucus is an organization of 24 urban municipalities within the province, to which the town of Stony Plain is a member. The purpose of this organization is to strengthen the significance and position of Alberta's mid-sized cities as relevant and important voice within the provincial-wide framework, collaborative efforts, and strategizing creative ways to address matters that directly impact mid-sized cities and advocate for recognition of an Alberta agenda. This organization is preparing to put forward an application to this provincial funding program. The details of the funding program and the project, the initiative itself, have been included within the agenda package attachment. And all 24 municipalities that are members of the Alberta Mid-Sized City Mayor's Caucus have been asked to endorse the grant application that's being submitted. So I will ask for council's consideration of this endorsement this evening and be prepared to answer any questions that council may have with regards to it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, administration, and I'll speak to this agenda item since I am the representative that attends these meetings. Generally, in terms of support for applications in terms of CPEP and other provincial grant funding, usually that just falls on my desk and the mayor signs off on it and it's just added. I think in terms of the Mid-Sized City Mayor's Caucus, they think that the application will carry more weight with the resolution of council. Again, this does not prohibit from us as a municipality to apply for this grant for other items as well. I think members of council understand that we received this grant in partnership for interns for other community projects within our community. I think we've also successful in doing a tri-regional plan that also came from this as well. So it does not prohibit the town of Stony Plain from accessing this grant in the future, or even now if we wanted to apply for something. It's just a resolution of council, so that can be added to the submission from the Mid-Sized City Mayor's Caucus to the provincial government. Town manager, anything to add?
Nothing further, Your Worship, but certainly can answer any questions on the policy side or anything else related to the item in front of council.
Okay. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. In reviewing this, it talks about the fact that there essentially are no financial implications on the municipalities, as there's an expectation of each municipality to contribute the time required, 30 hours per municipality, and then the oversight costs covered by existing financial commitments by members to the Mid-City Mayor's Caucus. But my understanding would be that is on the presumption that the grant will be or is awarded in full. What is the MCMC's position in relation to if they are not provided with the full funding of $400,000? Is this a $400,000 or nothing? If the province comes back and says 200 or 300, does this die on the floor? Or is this something that if the province comes back and provides them with $200,000, are they going to be returning to the members of the MCMC looking for the balance of the remaining $200,000?
Okay, that's a good question, Councilor Laurie. And the answer is no. They'll not be coming to the members looking for any additional costs. So the application is for $400,000. And if we're granted, as a caucus, $100,000 per se, then the work plan will be adjusted to match that. And then we'll feather that as we get more funding. So currently, right now, there was a motion at the last Mid-Sized City Mayor's Caucus last week in Cochrane. There was a motion to pass that the 2024 membership fees is $5,000. So that's set. So there's no more, like we can't ask for more. So To answer your question and concern, so the answer is no. It is what it is, and then we'll just adjust our game plan based on the grant funding that we received.
Excellent, thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the context on the future fees to be a part of this group. I'm very supportive of the MCMC. I've had the privilege of sitting on that as the deputy mayor. At times, I do feel there is a lot of value in that group, but at the same time, I'm obviously cautious that we have multiple member associations that we're a part of that all do great work on behalf of us, but just wanted to make sure that we're not dipping our toes in too deep to a financial commitment. So to hear that those fees have been set for 24, to hear that the MCMC is adaptable to what they may receive and what they may deliver, I'm actually very supportive of what we're looking at here in front of us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. See none. Councillor Loynes for the motion, please.
That Town Council endorse the Alberta Community Partnership Grant application to be funded the 4 phases of the Unlocking the Full Potential of Alberta Mid-Sized Cities Initiative.
Thank you. Members of Council, any debate on the motion to accept? No? Call question, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.4 is the strategic plan update for 2023-2026. As members of council and our admin staff, as well as our public, are aware, council does strategic planning every January and kind of June, just to make sure that we kind of set the direction for our community. And a lot of the strategic plan initiatives arise from our business plan and from our municipal development plan, which is our 25 to 30 year long range vision for our community. Administration, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few comments to open up with. And once again, Your Worship, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here in the chambers this evening with the team presenting the 2023-26 Council Strategic Plan. The plan before Council is created with purpose and with an eye to our shared future. The strategic plan identifies and sets out the goals and priorities of Council. The plan signals to the community and our partners the direction that Council is looking to take. The plan's priorities serve as outcomes around which administration can align our people, our fiscal resources, and our work plans. As stewards of this community and as leaders of this organization, setting high-level direction and aligning our efforts is important work. The strategic plan ensures we continue to be excited about the future of this community, and by pursuing its priorities with vigor, council and staff can make a difference. Your Worship, I know many of the councillors in this room have been through this process a number of times now. No plan can remain stagnant or set in stone. Stony Plain continues to grow and change, and the strategic plan process, along with other corporate planning processes, allows for these changes to be anticipated and shaped. With the plan that is in front of Council this evening, I'm excited to begin the work of continued, and in some cases new efforts, to align these resources, our people, and strengthen our required execution on the projects. Your Worship, again, it's always a pleasure to work with Council on the strategic plan, to go through the process, to receive that direction, input, and then to put it into words and put it onto paper, so to speak. Your Worship, is certainly one of my, I don't know if I'd say favorite things to do, but pretty high on my list of reasons I enjoy serving this Council and this community. I'm going to stop there, Your Worship. I'm going to turn it over to Brenda Otto, our General Manager of Strategic Services, to provide a more detailed overview of the plan.
Thank you, Town Manager. Your Worship and members of Council, provided for your review and consideration is the revised strategic plan for 2023 to 2026. This plan builds on the established direction Council provided in 2022 with updates based on your annual review, which occurred in January. A copy of the strategic plan has been included with the agenda package beginning on page 85. To guide the strategic plan, it is important to reflect on who we are as a community. Stony Plain is a growing community in the Edmonton metropolitan region. We are home to nearly 18,000 residents and 1,000 businesses that serve Stony Plain and our surrounding region. We use the strategic plan as a roadmap to provide focus on our commitments to the community and the important actions we will take to move Stony Plain towards our long-term vision. With Council's continued guidance and direction, we seek to ensure the strategic plan remains relevant and reflective of our current and future residents' needs for a community with a high quality of life. Before moving into the details of the plan, I would like to provide some context around the overarching theme guiding community growth. We developed this plan anticipating Stony Plain's population will grow to 30,000 residents in the near future, determining what we need to do in order to provide the services, programs, and decisions that will ensure Stony Plain reaches this milestone as a stronger and more vibrant community. Reflecting on where the strategic plan resides within our hierarchy of guiding documents, the strategic plan is drawn from our long-term community vision and values outlined in the town's municipal development plan. Following this approval by Council, administration will utilize the strategic plan to prepare priority projects and adjustments to operations, which will be presented to Council in the form of the corporate plan in November. The corporate plan provides the annual funding and resource allocation for projects, programs, and services delivered to our residents and businesses, as well as addressing the key actions outlined in the strategic plan. As outlined on page 94 of the agenda package, there are 5 strategic pillars that capture the deeper values and desires of the community. They tell the story of who we are and where we want to go, providing a structure to direct planning and decision-making. Each pillar is equally important and together provide the way forward. The first strategic pillar I will speak to is governance and partners. This strategic pillar signals that community development requires input and contribution from many different constituents. Open and inclusive discussion enables cohesive representation and leadership. Good governance is critical to meeting our residents' needs. Within this strategic pillar, we continue to identify key actions that pursue partnerships and advocacy to advance the noted key actions, including development of provincial highway corridors, of Old Town South, as well as alignment with tri-municipal, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis neighbors. Additionally, the Governance and Partners strategic pillar guides strengthening our town organization for efficient and effective service delivery and productive and safe employee culture. The third commitment under the Governance and Partners strategic pillar identifies key actions associated with utilizing meaningful engagement with residents and stakeholders to ensure integrated decision-making. Shifting to the strategic pillar of economic opportunity, and I just want to pause because I think this picture of our brand new school, which is no longer going to be named Stony Plain Central, is pretty awesome.
What's the name of the school?
I lose my place here in my presentation, but I think it's pretty a fantastic picture. So thank you to Parkland School Division for the photo credit. The town is committed to actions that support our current business community and attract new businesses. We will continue to focus on key actions that will provide local job opportunities and a prosperous business climate guided by our economic development strategic plan, targeting commercial areas of our downtown, North Business Park, and highway corridors with collaborative regional emphasis. Our third strategic pillar of supportive infrastructure ensures thoughtful resources and effort are allocated to maximizing our community assets and planning for future amenities that are much needed. Our commitments to this priority will continue to strengthen community connectivity with diverse modes of transportation and investment in municipal facilities. Additionally, the town will also continue to plan and construct much-needed new infrastructure to support our growing community, including a recreation center, cemetery, and passive outdoor recreation spaces. Moving to our fourth strategic pillar of community development, we will seek to take actions that will celebrate and enhance our community culture and spirit, provide a safe environment for all, and foster a sense of belonging and inclusion. The key actions that have been identified to support this commitment include celebrating, promoting local art, history, and culture, ensuring the safety of the CN rail line, pedestrian corridors, and the service levels that monitor and enforce public safety to ensure they are meeting our community needs. And additionally, we will continue to bolster volunteerism, neighborhood development, and community leadership, support diversity and immigration through the Together We Shine initiative, and develop innovative and diverse housing options. Our final strategic pillar of environmental responsibility outlines our commitments to protecting the environment for our residents today and into the future. The key actions identified to support this commitment include pursuing opportunities to enhance our waste and recycling facilities, leverage funding and partnerships at the regional, provincial, and federal level, advancing recommendations from our environmental and urban agricultural master plans, and building community support for environmental initiatives through public education and communication campaigns. In closing, following your approval, administration will continue to monitor and report on the status of the strategic plan with quarterly updates to council. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Members of council, obviously council had an opportunity to review prior to this meeting, so on March 13th, to provide input. Any more questions for clarity and understanding on what we just saw? Seeing none, just want to, on behalf of our residents and town council, thank you much for the work that administration has done to put the strategic plan together. A lot of communities don't put the time into doing a strategic plan. We have developed that process over the last 12 years as members of council and administration because it's vital for us as a community to know where we're going. Like many people say, if you don't have a goal in mind, any path will get you there. And that's a detriment to our community and how we want to build as the town of Stony Plain, which is why it's uniquely Stony Plain. And that has a lot to do with the commitment from councils today and previous councils and admin staff. So thank you much for that work. With that, Councillor Meyer, you're up. Motion, please.
Yes, I'm happy to make the motion. The Town Council approve the 2023-2026 strategic plan as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Okay, hot seat. Something that you'll like in the plan. Councillor Anderson, we'll start with you.
Before I get to what I like in the plan, I do have a quick question for administration, and I believe I know the answer to this, but I think when things like our strategic plan come out and our corporate plan come out, there's, an air of excitement about the direction that our community is moving and what that means. And I'm going to look through the strategic plan and see so many items that have been discussed amongst council and with administration at length and have visions of how that plays out in our community. And I'm super excited for the upcoming year with that in mind. But for our residents, how will they be able to access our strategic plan? So I know that it was a part of the package this evening and it can be accessed online, but will there be printed copies available, those sorts of things for residents to be able to access and celebrate our strategic plan with us?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson, yes, we primarily have our strategic plan placed on our town website for digital access and review. We do communicate this, the plan and the intentions of it out through our social media channels and some of our signage and other supportive communication outlets that we have throughout the year, I would say. In addition to that, we do print a limited copy of the actual document itself that we'll have available here at the town office. We provide them to some of our key stakeholders throughout the community and equip those within the network that are looking for a hard copy to make it as easily accessible as possible. So certainly if council members are looking to identify and ensure that we have them in the hands of particular members of our community, we can make that happen as required throughout the year.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I know we've had a couple of communication initiatives where, as council, we're provided the little postcards or business cards and those sorts of things with some QR codes to relevant information. And the feedback that's come back in terms of tracking on those sorts of things, it sounds like there's been some good response to that. And this is just one of those items where I wonder if there would be an opportunity to have some of those promotional materials created so that as council we can distribute those to residents and kind of our ongoing interactions so that they have the direct link to the strategic plan through that dialogue. So just something, food for thought, but something exciting for me, or I'm excited about when I look at this. I don't know that I can pick just one, but I'm going to go with enhancing passive outdoor recreation spaces to support community health and wellness. And I think we've already started to see some of that through discussions around some new amenities potentially going in at one of our local green spaces. So excited to see that one come to fruition over the coming year.
Thank you for your commentary, Councillor Anderson. I definitely appreciate the fact that we'll make sure that we get the word out to our residents. And having a little business card versus if you scan this, it gets you to our strategic plan. Here's what we plan to do in the next couple of years. And if you follow that link all the time, then you should be able to see what was come off because we completed it and what's new is coming on. So I think that's a great comment. Councillor Laurie?
I don't have my hand up.
Oh, good. Councillor Loynes? Nothing you like? Oh, see.
You like some?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just generally think it's a great process to be a part of. I've now been able to do it twice, and I've really enjoyed being able to see how this all comes together. I think it's important that we make it available to our residents, as Councillor Anderson has mentioned, and I think the way our admin puts it all together makes it very legible for everybody and anybody, so.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, anything to add?
You're asking me if I have any questions?
Or anything, or a positive
What do I
comment?
like about it? In all the years I've sat on council, that's got to be the smallest strategic plan. But it's so packed full of information. I mean, really, this would be Peggy Lee's song. Is that all there is? I looked at it and I went, okay. And the photography's beautiful. I love how it's written in sections. You can grab everything quickly. Highlighted an awful lot of our good features, and your photographer is outstanding. I don't know who's responsible for that, but I sing a lot of praises for the photographer on this.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate all the forethought that went into how to lay this out, and I think all of our residents can grab what it is that has happened here, because this is really their document.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Appreciate those comments, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Meyer, anything to say?
Yes. Thank you. I got to tell the story. While you guys were taking a break there, I was flipping through it looking for some highlights that I wanted to highlight, and one of the general managers was teasing me going, well, I hope you don't plan on making any changes. You've had your chance. And I wanted to actually say, thank you, actually, to all of council for putting in the work in the strategic retreat, and administration for creating a listening and sharing environment there. And like Councillor Hansard said, this is the residents' document, and so I'd also like to thank all the residents who've engaged and participated in all those many surveys and on the campaigns and going out and voting. I think they can see some of their I'm kind of, you can see the residents' concerns and priorities reflected in this document. So thank you all for all of that hard work. But I wanted to I have three that I particularly liked. From our key actions, exploring opportunities to further improve our services for residents and businesses through the tri-municipal regional collaboration. I heard many residents expressing a sentiment basically like, what are you guys doing working with your neighbors? How are you doing that? And I think we've been doing it for years. And I'm sure it's probably not the first time it's in this document, but so I'm glad to see that there. Enhancing our downtown and tourism offerings and collaboration with our business community and regional partners. Again, things that I heard on the campaign trail. And of course, I am very excited to see the build a recreation facility according to the recommendations of the 2017 Indoor Recreation Study. That one's been on there many times, and hopefully we can check that one off in the near future.
Thank you, Councilor Meyer. And again, just got to lobby and advocate to the provincial government and federal government for grant funding for that. Hopefully we continue to move the needle forward. Personally, I'm happy that, as mentioned by many members of council, this is the municipal development plan is a document of our community, by our community, for our vision. I think only Councilor Hansard and I were here originally when we actually first went to approach the residents. We set up a huge engagement strategy where we went up to the residents and said, what do you like about Stony Plain now? What don't you like about Stony Plain now? What do you see Stony Plain in the future? What do you want to see Stony Plain achieve when we mature as a municipality? Being 115 years old as a municipality, that's relatively young. Right? So in terms of maturation, we're still going there. So back then, Councillor Hansard and I was on council, and we put all those feelings and thoughts into what our community needed to be. And that's when we came up with the uniquely Stony Plain, of how we wanted to make sure that we were a complete community for everyone, inclusive, not just focused on one thing or another thing. And I think we had a lot of conversation and debate on how many pillars was in that municipal development plan. Was it 1? Was it 2? Was it 10? We settled on 5. Right? So for the last 12 years, 11 years, we have 5 pillars that we focus on. Mentioned is governance and partners. We need that. We realize that we cannot do anything by ourselves. Right? We need our residents, we need council, we need administration staff, we need the GOA, the Government of Canada, and our neighbors to make things happen. Right? We focus on economic opportunity. Businesses are the lifeblood in our community. Without them in our community, our residents leave. There's nothing for them to do here. We can continue to work on that with our staff and our business community. Community development, a huge thing for the town of Stony Plain. As Stony Plain has harnessed our future with our past. We hitched our wagon to it because we know who we are, where we came from as a community, and where we want to go in the future. And that is building that community so that we are a community, very inclusive and welcoming. Environmental responsibility. I think that was something new that we did as a council. In the early days, we were leaders and pioneers of environmental responsibility. The green bin, the organic carts, the blue bag recycling, Stony Plain was the leader, and we continue to focus on that. And also supportive infrastructure. If you don't have the ability to look after the current assets you have, then there's no point in building new assets and infrastructure, because the ones you have will depreciate, fall apart, and you will not be able to run the municipality. And with that being said, 5 cogs is still lots. They all turn in the background, but council highlights 1 or 2 every strategic plan, knowing that as a municipality, we cannot do all 5 extremely well or highly focused at the same time. Council lays the foundations through our governance model, strategic planning, and the administration brings it forward to us to approve. If you follow the strategic plan over the last 10 years, you can see that growth and development. Right? In certain years, we focused on environmental responsibility, making that a highlight of what we focus on. Then it came into community development. The last few years, we've kind of noticed that we spend a lot of money in infrastructure, necessary. And coming forward, looking at economic opportunity, the rec center, passive recreation. That's the next cog that we're looking at. So to be a complete community, we need to be well-balanced and focus on all the cogs that make our community great. So I just want to thank members of council for buying into the strategic planning process and also having that ability to be honest and open to have those conversations. Because sometimes, I know a lot of residents don't see it, it's very uncomfortable when we're sitting there having those conversations, those heartfelt ones about what we think is best for the community. Right? To be honest, to share your feelings, to receive some feedback and criticism. But it is always good to see that after that is done, we're united as a council. Right? We bring what's best for us that we think, we debate it, we argue it, we pass it as a motion, and we walk here and we support it because that's what our community is about. So members of council, thank you very much for, again, another great job doing the strategic plan. I look forward to the next couple with you. And hopefully we continue to build our community. Councilor Marr, thank you for the motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Okay, that ends our business items. Moving on to number 10, which is council discussion. I think we had a pretty good one, round table. So second round, anybody want to do a round table? Councilor Meyer?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would just highlight that the library is looking for a new library director. We have put out advertisements and we'll be interviewing, I believe it is the 15th, 16th, and 17th, if my memory serves me correct. So hopefully we will have a new director in place sooner than later.
Okay, thank you for the update. Councilor Anderson?
Mr. Mayor, I had the privilege on Wednesday, March 22nd, to attend the Battle of the Badges hockey game with Deputy Mayor Hansard, which was organized in support of Legacy Place Society and Parkland County First Responders in terms of mental health initiatives and supporting first responders and military families. And in light of the tragedy that occurred in Edmonton, I think it was a needed event in our community. I think, a lot of tears were shed, a lot of hugs and, such were offered. But I think it was a great show of support for the families of Constable Brett Ryan and Constable Travis Jordan. And, I think it can be hard to find the right words to share when tragedy strikes, but doesn't cost us anything to show up and be present in times of tragedy and grief. And the wife of Constable Brett Ryan was in attendance and dropped the puck to begin kind of the evening's events. But I think just a great show of community in the Tri-region, and was honored to be a part of that evening. So.
Thank you for sharing, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just want to extend a thank you and again condolences to you on the comments you had starting off the meeting this evening. When you experience loss, everybody kind of deals with that a little bit different. I've had the opportunity to take in services today for Constable Ryan and Constable Jordan, and as a former first responder, it certainly is something that you never want to attend, you never want to witness, but you're more than honored when you get that opportunity to do so. So again, as Councillor Anderson mentioned, the outpouring of support community-wide is greatly felt and is greatly appreciated by those who are impacted by it. It's fortunate and unfortunate. The Legacy Place, they had done the fantastic work. This was their second annual. They do fantastic work, and it just highlighted the coinciding of the timing of the events. Just highlighted why they're there. and the continued need for them in our community, and, you know, to their families who will continue to need support, to their colleagues who will continue to need support over the coming days, months, and years as they grieve and as they deal with these losses. So, again, just a huge amount of respect to those agencies and those people out there doing that work. A couple of things for me this evening. I did want to extend some significant appreciation to our public works crews. They have been out there working very, very hard. This is a very difficult time of year for them with the freeze thaw that goes on. And so in particular, the storm drain steaming that they have been working on. We did have an email come out from the general manager letting us know that if we had any concerns, where to reach out and to let her know. And honestly, I never even had to let anybody know, because by the time I had noticed the concern, before I got around to letting anybody know, it was fixed. And so I saw our crews in the steamer truck out there throughout the community over and over and over again. So just a huge kudos to them of keeping the roads in great condition, getting that water off the road as quickly as possible to prevent issues like freezing ponds and further pothole damage and those type of things. So to our roads crew and our public works crew, just a huge appreciation on that. That does bring me to the question, though, about the inevitable at this time of year is the potholes. So we are obviously starting to see some emerge. We are starting to see them pop up. I'm just wondering if the general manager has any update as to kind of when we can expect to see crews out starting to work on those.
Your worship, through the councillor Laurie, thank you for the question. As you brought up, this is a challenging time of year for the crews. They're hopping from sort of an interim snow removal to drainage, and those ultimately create potholes. I do know that the crews, they do what they can with the materials that they have to fill some smaller ones right now. If there are significant ones, they can address. The main work that they do for pothole filling doesn't start until generally middle of April, end of April, when the temperatures are warm up and some asphalt supplies start to roll in. Generally, the materials don't start rolling from the plants that we need until around that time when they fire up. If there are large potholes that are being observed that are just causing nuisance to the public or otherwise, they can contact Public Works. We do have ways of addressing those sooner, but the bulk of the work with the major crews will happen around that time.
Excellent, thank you very much. And then just a couple other things, Your Worship. You know, with the great weather, obviously it's been fantastic seeing everybody out on the trails. Our trail network is a great asset to the community, and they have been very busy over the last couple of days with the warmth that we've had. Just a reminder to residents, unfortunately with the melt, we're also finding a lot of the surprises that get left behind over the winter time. So, you know, if everybody does their part and pitches in and cleans up after their pets as they're out on the walk, it makes for a much more pleasurable experience for everybody within our community. And then our pitch in week. So April 16th to 22nd is pitch in week. Again, with the thaw, you start to see the garbage and that's blown around. So, you know, just encourage residents that while you're out for your walk, bring a little Safeway bag, garbage bag, something like that with you. And, you know, if everybody does their part and picks up a little bit at a time, before we know it, we'll have a very clean, pristine looking community like we always have and like our residents appreciate. And again, it's one thing I've always found in living in Stony Plain is the pride that our residents take in the community is second to none. And you know, it's not an uncommon sight to see somebody out there picking up garbage that you know isn't theirs. And to have them contributing to our community like that, I think is something that we need to cherish and respect and thank them for. So that's all for me this evening, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Loyens.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things for me. I wanted to say thank you to the General Manager of Community and Social Development. I had an opportunity with a couple of my colleagues to attend Roots of Hope community event where we talked about mental health and suicide awareness. I think it's great to end the stigma around it. I've said that before and on many occasions will continue to. I think it's great to normalize that it's okay to not be okay and to get help. I also wanted to mention that the farmers market opens up on Saturday, April 1st. No, that is not an April Fool's joke. It is the reality. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I had a question for the General Manager of Community and Protective Services. I have noticed lately, and I'm not sure what the cause has been, but the new Circle K on Veterans Boulevard, I'm finding that people are exiting at the wrong exit and driving north on the wrong side of the road. And I'm curious, it's about 5 times this week so far. If we need a no entry sign there for people coming out, I don't know the proper way of dealing with it. I know the exit just down from the one is straight through, but I'm talking about the one where the barricade is.
Yeah, Your Worship, through the Councilor Lawrence, I'll have to take that question back and go review if there is additional signage that we can help road users find the right direction to go, and we'll investigate how to best outline that for them.
Thank you, and that is all for me.
Thank you. Spike belt. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the mayor had sent me to the badges, Battle of the Badges, with the idea that I was going to do the puck drop, and I thought, I better research how you drop a puck. But anyway, I saw the Queen do it on a YouTube video, and I thought, I can do that. She just sort of dropped it and went on about her business. So I went there thinking that was going to happen. It was wonderful to see so many people there, and the lineup of dignitaries, the fire services, RCMP, the Honor Guard, and then this lovely lady, Brett Ryan's wife, came and joined us, and everything that family has done since the 2 officers were killed has been a class act. And if she shed tears, she didn't shed them as she walked out carrying his jersey and dropped the puck and then walked back and held that jersey really close to her. And I guess that's a jersey that, I don't know if it was a referee's shirt or if it was something that he had when he actually played there. And then I went out into the lobby. By the way, you could have heard a pin drop in that arena when she dropped the puck. It was arresting. It just stopped you in your tracks. Then when she walked back, she didn't have tears then either, and I thought, this is one strong lady. So we went out into the lobby area, and there were his parents, separated at first 2 different places, and they gathered down at the far end, and I thought I would get in a line and bring them wishes from council and mayor. And there was 2 people in front of me. There was no big lineup. Mayor Gamble was right in front of me. And when I got up there, she looked at me, and I took her hand, and she looked down and saw a deputy mayor badge, and then she dropped my hand and gave me a really nice embracing hug. And then she said, I'm so impressed with how the communities have come together to support our family. And I told her that I was bringing greetings on behalf of Mayor Choi, all of council. I named each of you by name. I said all of our senior leadership team, our staff, and the people of the town of Stony Plain. We want you to know that we do care and that we will continue to hold you up in our prayers and our thoughts, and we will speak his name. It is important to speak their names because that's how we keep people alive in our community. With that, she was crying pretty strongly, and she said, you know, Pat, she said, my son played in this arena. He coached and he refereed in this arena. In fact, he was supposed to referee this game. And she said, thank you so much. Please take that back to council, senior leadership, staff, and the people of the town of Stony Plain. Just gave me back all the words I had given her. And I thought, that's pretty good presence of mind for somebody who's gone through what she's gone through. I just want to say that I think it's really important that we do continue to remember these 2 officers and hold them up. And then, of course, a few days later, another officer was killed, and I'm going, what is wrong with our society? I'm honored to have been able to go. I don't mind one bit that Constable Ryan's wife dropped the puck. She did a beautiful job of it. And I thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to go in your stead there. And Roots of Hope was good. Melanie and Justin had everything covered. I could have slipped out, but I was amazed at how many people at that event were actually seasoned people in working in not crime prevention, but suicide prevention. And such knowledge and wisdom that came out of the people there. You feel almost a little insignificant, like what can I contribute here? Because these people have it pretty under control. But once again, we get to represent council and the people of Stony Plain in these things. So that's why it's important that we show up. That's all I have for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing that forward and sharing with us. I think just add on to what Councillor Lori had mentioned and asked about is in terms of street cleaning. As we can see that the snow has moved away, the streets show a lot of sand, and kind of timeline for that as well.
Your Worship, thank you for the question. The street sweeping doesn't normally start getting the full swing until most of the snow is off the ground. So we could again expect that in late April to start seeing the street sweepers getting out there. If temperatures improve, they'll probably start a little sooner. But just as a placeholder, probably the end of April is when they'll start to really get into it.
Okay. And just the members' council, this week we have the Alberta Municipalities President Summit and also the Alberta Spring Leaders Caucus. I think those that are signed up, if you do have some free time now, if you didn't sign up, please stop by and check it out. I think it's a good opportunity to learn and network from other municipal elected officials. Sometimes the best knowledge is not gained through a book or through anything else. It's gained through visiting and connecting with other municipal elected officials. As my saying is, like, you know, somebody else has already made the mistake and spent the money making that mistake, so we don't need to duplicate that. So taking back the knowledge that we learn, we can bring those best learnings to our community so that we can have the best practice so that you know, we put the best forward for our community. And with that, we're adjourned. So thank you, administration, for getting the packages ready for us.